Well, hello everyone. This is your friendly neighborhood pastor coming to you from Christ the King Lutheran Church in Escanaba, Michigan. This weekend we're getting ready for the 18th Sunday after Pentecost, but again at Christ the King. Here we are taking a little break from the Revised Common Lectionary, and we're focusing on the Small Catechism. And so for September and the rest of October, we're focusing on the 10 Commandments. Last week was you shall not commit adultery. This week we go to the next commandment, you shall not steal. So we're here with the 7th commandment from Exodus chapter 20, verse 15, which is very brief and certainly very open-ended. You shall not steal. And so what is included in this? And so for help, of course, we turn to Luther's Small Catechism, where Luther unpacks what is exactly does this commandment mean. And in the Small Catechism, he says we are to fear and love God, right? All the commandments start off with that. The explanations, we are to fear and love God first and foremostly. Why? So that we don't take our neighbor's money or property or get them in any dishonest way, but help them protect what is theirs and their means of making a living. And so in this commandment, you've got the you shall not take what is not yours, what does not belong to you, somebody else's stuff, private property, possessions, and so on and so forth. But also you shall help, and all the commandments are kind of ordered that way. You shall not, but also you shall. There's a commandment to stay away from something, to not do something, but also implicitly there's that command to do something. And you can think of the great example of that righteous leader who came to Jesus and says to Jesus, I've done everything, I've fulfilled all the commands, and Jesus doesn't really disagree with him. He says, good, you have obeyed, but one thing you lack. Sell all your possessions and give them to the poor. And at that moment, that guy was cut to the heart. And so I bring that up because though people don't steal, many people don't, some people do, whether they realize it or not, and I'll get into that in just a bit. Underneath that commandment is a deeper command to, as Jesus sums it up, to love our neighbor as ourselves. Love fulfills the commandments of God. That's what Paul says also in Romans chapter 13. And so this commandment, you shall not steal, we hear lots of biblical examples of what happens when people do steal. We can remember the story of David and Bathsheba. David steals essentially his commander's wife, Uriah's wife, Bathsheba. So he's not stealing stuff, but stealing his wife, but ultimately stealing his life away from him. So stealing also kind of overflows into some of the other commandments, certainly about coveting, about stealing someone's reputation, the 8th commandment, identity theft, I guess you could tie that into there, but also stealing away someone's life, you shall not murder, and stealing away someone's faith, trying to persuade them to go into idolatry. And so stealing can encompass a lot of things. But I think the particular focus for this commandment is about property, about stuff. And so the part of this commandment is that God has given us the gift of possessions. And that's not a bad thing, that God is a God who loves stuff. He created all the stuff we have, this world that we live in, the fish and the sea and the ocean and the lakes and the animals and the deer and the birds and things like that. I say that because it's hunting season around here, and it's something I've tried to get into, but I'm not a very good hunter quite yet, but I'm working on it. So some other biblical examples of people stealing, you can go to Joshua chapter 7, Achan, Achan. He kind of pinches off a little bit of the booty from raiding Jericho and other places for himself. He steals from the other people. And what happens when you steal from other people is not only do you harm them, but you also, by extension, harm their family, harm the community, and so on and so forth. And so the command to not steal, it affects lots more than just the person-to-person contact, because so much is involved when someone steals. Trust is broken. That trust is breached. Confidence in someone else, you just don't have it because they've just, how can you trust in someone who just took everything took your stuff? And sadly, often it's the people who are closest to us who steal, who take, who, really not only hurt our feelings, but hurt our confidence in them. I remember when I was a young fella, a young lad, and we were at Kmart, and I remember walking around in the store, and at that time I was big into cards, all sorts of different cards, and I just couldn't help myself. I opened up a pack of Lion King cards at that time, and it was such a, I felt dirty about it. But so I opened the pack, and lo and behold, there was one of those special edition cards in there that was worth like 40 or 50 bucks. And so to cover up my sin, which is often what happens when you steal, you sin to cover up sin. I told my mom to buy that pack of cards, and so being the loving mother she did, she did and covered my sin for me. So protecting me from stealing. But stealing harms lots of other areas of our lives than just that fact. Another form of stealing we can see in Acts chapter 5, Ananias and Sapphira, who say they sold all this property for the sake of the church, and they give, but they don't give what they promised to give. And so it's a very interesting moment of poor stewardship, but also lying to God, lying to the Holy Spirit, because ultimately all these offenses, when we break ourselves against God's commandments, they are an offense to Him. Certainly they harm people, but ultimately they can harm our relationship with God. Some contemporary examples we can think about stealing on the personal, individual level. Someone who's not doing their job at work, in a sense, is stealing from their employer. Someone who's sleeping on the job, stealing from their employer. Someone who's trying to get a piece of property or get something from their parents when their parents are on an age and in the midst of senility, and they try to get something because they don't want their brother or sister to get it. That's stealing too, even though it won't get them thrown in jail. But so there's a lot of different forms of stealing and theft that takes place other than just simple burglary and theft. But also stealing is, this commandment, like I said, is about helping people in the midst of their financial hardship, their financial troubles, and we as a church try to do that as best we can. You can't help everybody, but you try to help the people of God as best you can, and that's the whole mission of the Church of Jesus Christ, is to help people in the midst of their needs. If they lose a job, if they got fired, if they're on strike, if whatever that, how do we help out one another in the midst of our financial needs, knowing if someone cannot provide for themselves, how can we go ahead and do that? And again, that ties back to the fifth commandment of helping our neighbor. You shall not kill, but also we shall help them in their physical needs. And so the seventh commandment kind of positively gets at that as well, helping someone in the midst of their financial trouble, giving them the stuff they need, food, blankets, clothing, and so on and so forth. A lot of what Lutheran Disaster Relief is doing right now down in the hurricane-struck areas of the world, in Florida and Houston and in Puerto Rico and so on and so forth. And so to not steal is not only to not take what is not yours, but also to help and to bless because of what we've been blessed with so richly by God. So just a nice little foretaste of what's going to be coming for this weekend. So may the Lord bless you and guide you as you dig into His Word this week as we focus on "You shall not steal." Exodus chapter 20, verse 15. God bless. Take care. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.